Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This very 28th of January 2019, I am Yemisi Lanre-Idowu. Yes, there are growing concerns about the slowing pace of global economic growth, which has capped crude price gains, and that's despite OPEC supply cut and the steady price of Brent for 2 weeks now. Even the political turmoil in Venezuela, surprisingly, has done little to raise prices. Well, Nigeria is one of such countries that will benefit from crude price rise if it eventually comes. But today, our attention is turned to Nigeria's forex interventions, especially the CBN forex restriction on 42 items. Now, has that move by the CBN over 4 years ago now encouraged the local production, this ban that we're talking about? Plus, are you a lawyer? How business savvy are you with the practice? We'll be discussing the business of law. That's interesting, I must tell you. Well, that's coming up later on in the course of the program. Well, let's get to it. This is Business Nigeria. All right, let's bring you up to speed about these banned items. And the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, says the bank's policy to restrict importers of some 42 items from accessing foreign exchange was the right call. It says the CBN took the measure to ban those items from accessing foreign exchange through official routes to encourage local production of the items and simultaneously conserve the nation's depleting foreign reserves. Well, some of the 42 items not valid for foreign exchange at the Nigerian window include rice, cement, fertilizer, margarine, palm produce, beef, vegetables, poultry, and eggs, wooden doors and iron rods, amongst others. All right, we'll be talking about this latest stance of the CBN later, as we have the Professor of Capital Markets, Uche Waleke, join us on this later in the course of the program. But let's talk about the business of law. Yes, from the need for lawyers to acquire business education, become business-oriented, and have a business-minded approach to legal practice has become pertinent following revelations of how poorly paid some lawyers, especially those at the bottom of the ladder, are. Well, to this extent, a group of legal minds have put together a gathering tagged the Business of Law Conference. Now, the founder, Strictly Law Business, Busola Ajala, is in the studio to shed more light on these many things for joining me on Business Nigeria. Busola, it's a very interesting one to talk about the business of everything, really. Exactly. And law is also very important. And I'm sure many do not know that there is a business angle to law. Practice. Exactly. And nowadays we see that everything transcends practice and procedure. Now, let's get down to business, the business of law. How do lawyers begin to be law business savvy? How do they begin to acquire the skills for business in law?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our legal curriculum education does not afford us the opportunity for us to acquire some business skills or to be business oriented, because the pioneers of the profession have some kind of aversion towards commercialization of the practice. So are of the opinion that justice should be accessible and affordable for all. And so to that extent, there's a bit of, aversion against you commercializing, your legal practice. But, times have evolved, things have changed, the environment has also changed, there's a lot of disruption. Business environment as it was then is no longer the same now. So, but because that aversion is still there, the legal education curriculum is still, lacking. There's still that deficiency in which most lawyers are not oriented, when it comes to doing business, the art of doing business. So, but I am of the opinion that be you a practitioner, whether as a legal practitioner in whatever field you're practicing in, particularly if it's the primary source of your livelihood, you need to understand the business side of that practice or that skill or that industry in which you operate, because there's a difference between you being a lawyer, the practice, the procedure. Then how do you monetize your legal skills, your legal knowledge? How do you monetize it? So it's important that lawyers understand, you know, this business side of law. But because we're not educated, you know, that way while acquiring our legal training, it's now therefore our own responsibility to go in search of, you know, business education, go to business schools, go to management schools. There are, you know, 3-month crash courses that we can do just to get that knowledge. You just need the basics. You don't need to, you know, do a deep dive into getting
well,
business
Busola, that's
education.
talking about going back to school. Yes, you have said it, just a few crash courses would help in this area. But let's get practical here. Have you tested it? And have you made money out of it?
Yes, I have.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so when I talk about the business of law, there are different angles to it. There are different things you need to know, you need to understand. So I'm a lawyer, for instance. I had a challenge once. A very good friend of mine said, "Oh, I'm not aware that you are a lawyer." And I'm like, "Wow, you don't know I'm a lawyer?" So it means that I have not been visible to the person for him to know that I am a lawyer. And then I'm sure he would have had instances where he would have needed, you know, the services of a lawyer, and perhaps had gone to meet, you know, someone else while he has his bosom friend as a lawyer. But because, not that he doesn't know that I'm a lawyer, but he didn't register in his brain, because I have not projected myself in that light to him. I have not become visible. So I tell people that you need to be visible for you to be able to attract clients, because you need to be in business, and it's having clients or having brief that will make you remain in business. So you need to be visible to your targeted audience so that they can know that you are a lawyer, and then they can give you services. They can hire your services. Another area is for you to also know how to be able to connect with those customers, because sometimes you may be visible, but you are within the wrong cycle. So you need to know how to network effectively. You don't just sit amongst lawyers in the cycle of lawyers, because you're pursuing the same thing. You're looking for briefs together. So you go out, you mix up with other people who are not in that environment, in that profession, but who are your potential clients. That way you'll be able to get jobs from them. Another area is you need to also understand how to bill, because that's another area where we're lagging as lawyers. We really do not know how to bill for services.
So there is no law as to how to bill, really.
We really don't have it.
Okay.
It's not, when it comes to billing, it's not well regulated in our industry. So you just have to, you know, come up with what you feel is the reasonable man's price, or what you feel is commensurate to the value you are giving. So I tell people you need to understand how to bill a client, because there's a danger in you overbilling or underbilling. Yeah. So you need to be able to get that balance. Getting that balance would help you, you know, make profits from your trade. So that way you're not undercutting yourself, and you're also not overbilling the clients. And that way you remain in business. You're able to retain that client. You're also able to get referral from that client in order to get more clients to do business with.
Okay, yes, there is a lot of technological disruption already in the system.
Yes.
And it keeps evolving,
exactly.
I tell you. And we've seen such like the ride-hailing cab and all that. Now, let's come back to law. Now, how do we begin to leverage on this position for business opportunities, for investment, talking about technology disruptions?
Now, I tell people, that particularly lawyers, we have to upskill. We cannot just depend on our legal skills alone. We need to get business savvy. We need to get technological savvy. We need to understand tech and how it operates, and know how you can automate your services. So there are a lot of applications, a lot of technological applications that you can use to automate your legal services. We have Law Pavilion doing something. I can't remember the name again. They have, you know, an AI, an artificial intelligence, you know, something they have come up with. So we can leverage on all of those areas, on all of those technological, you know, disruption to aid our services. I tell people that when they say AI is coming to to take away the lawyer's job. I say AI will not take away your job, because AI will not go to the courtroom to do advocacy. AI will not sit in the boardroom to argue matters on behalf of your clients. But AI is going to complement your work. So you need to understand how AI works and use it, incorporate it into your own legal services so that it can complement your work and make the job easier for you. So we really, as lawyers, need to begin to understand and go the tech way. Yeah.
All right, go the tech way. But another thing that many people most times are using in this present day world of business is also branding.
Yes.
Branding is very essential.
Yes.
Yes, if I see a lawyer, if I see you as a lawyer now and probably see another person, sometimes they say the way you are addressed is the way people would see you.
Exactly.
Now, branding is very important. So what's branding in law like at the moment?
Well, if I'm talking about my own personal opinion, okay, so I am working on myself, you know, as a brand. You know, I tell people that you can have a personal brand. You know, it's not just about the law firms, you know, who are also branded. And a lot of law firms are also coming up to brand themselves to say, oh, we want to be known for this particular area of law, and then they begin to work towards it. So branding plays a major role. It helps people to know you, to know your message, to know what exactly you stand for. It also helps them to know the area of law in which you practice. Okay. So because that way, you are able to sell yourself faster. So when you need a lawyer in maybe commercial area, or perhaps in corporate, you know, some aspects of corporate, you know, law, they know, oh, this is the go-to person. So we have law firms, we have individuals who have been able to package themselves well, who have branded themselves. And you know, when you're talking about intellectual property, this is the go-to person. When you're talking about oil and gas, this is the go-to person. The problem is that a lot of us want to do so many things, and at the end of the day, we lose ourselves in an attempt to do a whole lot of things. But you can, you know, carve a niche for yourself in a particular area. It might be 2, 3, but, you know, have strength in it. Brand yourself very well in it. Let people know that these are the areas, you know, in which you practice, and that way you are able to sell yourself.
Okay, so where do we begin? You've talked about taking it back to school.
Yes,
and also branding, and also being technological,
savvy,
updated.
Yes.
All right, your conference is coming up, and I'm sure you're going to be taking some students on this and all other professionals in this area.
It's the Business of Law Conference. It's coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, 29th of January at Jeep Recital Hall, Moson Center. So we have students, we have lawyers, mostly lawyers, because the students, yes, they'll grasp a little, but lawyers who are already in the practice. Yes, so we have people, and then we have business professionals also coming to talk to us about how we can incorporate business strategies into our legal service. All right, we'd have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Busola Ajala, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. All right, you're watching Business Nigeria. We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll be talking about the CBN's restriction on 42 items. Just stay with us. This is Business Nigeria, and back to our lead story, and that's talking about the CBN stands on the ban on the restriction of 42 items from foreign exchange. And talking to us now from our Abuja studios, is joining us now actually, is the head of department Banking and Finance, Nasarawa State University, and Professor of Capital Markets, Uche Owaleke. Many thanks for your time, Professor. Yes, let me go straight to the point. The CBN claims there is massive investment and establishment of cottage industries who are engaged in production of these banned items. And now in the past 4 years, we've seen these items being banned, and even there is an additional one to it. What's your assessment so far? Has it been able to encourage cottage industries, really?
Yeah, first and foremost, let me say that the items, we are not banned. It's just that the central bank is restricting access, from the official forex window. The central bank is saying that if you wish to import those things, you could source your forex from anywhere, but not from the foreign exchange market. So it's not as if they are banned. Let me also say that is one measure that is that is good. Is something that is welcome, and that's because if you consider the overarching objectives remain to conserve forex and of course to promote the local industries. And if you put into cognizance the fact that external reserves was as low as $23 billion about the time this measure was put in place, and that we have seen some accretion in external reserves, and the accretion we have seen in external reserves has been largely on account of, yes, first the recovery in oil prices, but again you can also attribute that to what I call effective demand management strategy of the central bank, because exchange rates, by and large, is a function of demand and supply. So to that extent, to the extent of trying to achieve conserve foreign exchange, I think the objective has been largely met. The other leg of it, of course, has to do with growing domestic industries, helping them to develop. And if you look at our history, since our first National Development Plan, 1962 to 1968, where we tried to emphasize import substitution in industrialization, it's been more of the fiscal side, the use of tariffs, the use of quotas, and so on. So the restriction on 42 items, in my view, is one way that the central bank is also complementing the efforts of fiscal authorities, in ensuring that local industries are protected and developed.
Okay, let me come in here, again, Professor.
Some of them you're already showing on your screen. If you look at the numbers, import bill has dropped, drastically since 2015, from about 5.5 billion naira, from what we are told, to about 1.5 billion as at 2017. Okay, if you look at rice, for example, which is number one on that list, the import of rice has also dropped. As at 2015, if you look at a report by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, the demand for rice was around 6.3 million metric tons, whereas the local production was around 2.3. So 4.3 million metric tons was met by the true import.
Okay, Professor, let me come in. Let me butt in here.
Importing 1.2 million metric tons, we now import about 6,000 metric tons.
Yes, we have this data, Professor.
Conserving resources.
Yes, we have this data as we have shown it graphically, but there seems to be much more focus on some of these items, like the rice, the tomatoes, agricultural products to be precise. But if we look at some other items that were restricted from accessing foreign exchange, talking about the wooden doors and all that, how do we begin to consider the face of local manufacturing in these areas in terms of long and short-term gains?
Yes. Rice is a good example, of the improvements that we've seen in the area of local production. The other one is also cement. This policy has helped in no small measure in the performance of companies like Dangote and Lafarge. The policy on restriction of access to forex for cement. Now, you look at the other items on that list. These are products that we can easily produce here in Nigeria. Take toothpick, for example, that is even on number 30 on that list. As we speak now, toothpick factories have been set up in some places in Nigeria. Now, they were not there before now. Look at palm oil. Palm oil is also one good product. In fact, recently I read that the trade minister of Indonesia was talking about exchanging palm oil, for crude, with Nigeria. You can imagine that This is a country that used to be the largest producer of palm oil in the 60s. And today, Indonesia, one of the countries that was said to have come here to take the seats, is now telling us that they are ready to exchange it for for crude. So that will now tell you why this measure is very important. We need to really build, get these factories to regain their production strength. Look at the textile factories that have all, folded up, all because we exposed them to unfair competition, from products that were imported abroad. So it's important we prioritize these items. And that's also why the central bank, because of the successes recorded so far, is thinking of even increasing the number, which in my view is in order. There is no reason why we should be importing things like fish, things like meat, into this country.
All right, Professor, the CBN has talked about the CBN has talked about circumvention of the policy, but unfortunately we do not have enough time for you to react to that. But we'll surely bring you back on to talk to us about the issue of circumvention of this policy. Professor Uche Waleke, thank you so much for your analysis and your thoughts on the CBN stance on restriction of 42 items from foreign exchange. Thank you. Ratings agency Fitch has warned that emerging markets will face more downgrades than upgrades this year, and that's as foreign debt levels leave them weak to rising U.S. interest rates and the strength of the dollar. Fitch says Latin America, Middle East and Africa will be impacted more by low credit scores due to high share of foreign currency debt, but it predicts that the dollar will be strong this year as U.S. economy will grow faster than Europe and Japan. Look downward in early bargains on Monday as dealers study supply lines at the London market. We'll see the Brent crude trading at $60 a barrel, taking more than 1% below weekend price. Many analysts say they are monitoring the OPEC basket crude cut, checking out price equation. Well, unfortunately, we cannot bring up Effi and Gekop to talk to us about how the market is closed today. But in the last 5-day trading week, last week, we saw that about 4 out of the 5 days, we saw market prices on the rise. The Osher Index rose for about 151 basis points. And that saw much of bargain on hunting, which many analysts say may continue this week, and we'll see investors checking up on beaten stocks. Well, we'll see how that goes. We'll bring you details in the course of our news later on. On that, we'll wrap up Business Nigeria for today. Many thanks for your time. I'll see you tomorrow.